The river smelled of copper and crushed reeds, a low fog curling above the water like a funeral shroud that refused to lift. Dawn seeped across the sky in bruised streaks of lavender and ash, revealing the full ruin of the Trident. Beneath banners torn to ribbons, men lay entangled with broken lances and rent shields, their lifeblood turning the shallows a dark wine red. Crows had not yet come. It was too early, and the silence felt sacrilegious, as if the gods themselves held their breath to mark the moment history bent upon itself. Rhaegar Targaryen sat his black stallion on the riverbank, armor dull with gore, his silver-gold hair matted against his cheek. A ruby had slipped from the gorget at his throat, lost somewhere in the mud. He scarcely noticed its absence. Victory tasted of ash on his tongue. Ahead, Ser Oswell went, and the remaining Kingsguard formed an honor guard around a litter fashioned from spear shafts and a battered cloak. Upon it rested the body of Robert Baratheon, great chest stilled at last, the warhammer that had once shattered Prince Rhaegar's breastplate, now floating downstream like flotsam from a forgotten age. The rebel host had broken and scattered in the night, and the dawn belonged to dragons once more. Across the ford, Ned Stark knelt beside his dying cousin Sir Will, cold river water lapping at his boots. He watched the royal party from beneath a torn banner of the direwolf, gray eyes unreadable. Stark blood ran in threads across his mail, but the cuts upon his honor felt deeper. Robert's charge had failed. The promise to Lyanna had failed. The North's gamble lay drowned in the river. Ned felt the sagging ache of defeat settle onto his shoulders. Yet even as he bowed his head, he sensed eyes upon him. Sir Barristan Selmy, white cloak ragged yet immaculate in spirit, regarded the northern lord a moment longer than courtesy required, as though measuring steel within the young wolf's spine. Then the Kingsguard turned away, and the future swung on unseen hinges. Trumpets keened thinly through the damp air. Rhaegar's voice, sonorous even through exhaustion, carried above the crush of survivors. He commanded every fallen rebel to be given rights befitting warriors, the wounded tended, and the small folk spared retribution. Such mercy cost him nothing. Yet he felt each word weigh upon his chest like a mailed fist. Mercy earned no crowns. Across the Trident his banners rose, three-headed dragons unfurling to greet the sun, gilded by morning light. Somewhere deep within, a note of his harp sounded, unbidden memory of softer days in Summerhall. That life stood as distant as the rumored gods. By midday they marched south, the banners of the fallen trailing behind like ghosts bound to his retinue. Wounded horses groaned. The air smelled of blood and wet wool, clinging to the throat. No songs rose among the royal host. Even the camp followers trod softly, as if their voices might wake dead men who had sworn vows against them. The king's road unfurled before them, dusty, scarred, ancient. King Aerys awaited in the Red Keep, a flickering lantern within a tower of glass, brightness and peril in the same flame. Night gathered upon the third day, and with it came rain. It fell cold and relentless, soaking banners and bones alike. They made camp beneath a stand of twisted oaks. Rhaegar retired to his pavilion, candles casting trembling shadows upon the silk. There, Lyanna Stark waited, dark hair unbound, eyes the pale hue of winter sky over snowbound fields. She rose as he entered, her linen shift clinging to rain-chilled skin. No court bard could capture the quiet between them, for it was the hush of turning worlds. He set aside his sword, hands trembling. Outside, the storm drummed upon canvas, an old god beating at the walls of a new one. Rhaegar touched her cheek as though she might vanish like the songs he once sang. "It is done," he whispered, and wondered if that were truth or the sweetest lie. She answered with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Nothing is ever done. You know that." She pressed her palm against his breastplate, feeling the dent where Robert's hammer had struck him moons ago. Beneath steel, his heart thudded, too alive, too aware. She smelt of rain and horses, of pine forests, far to the north. He thought of dragons circling the wall. He thought of Dorne's burning sun. He thought of the Seven, of prophecy, of the last song of ice and fire. His throat closed around all of it, and still he could not speak. When dawn came, they broke camp and rode hard for King's Landing. Ravens preceded them, black scribes scrawling fate across the sky. At Maidenpool, Lord Mouton bent the knee. At Duskendale, farmers lined the road with sheaves of late barley, kneeling as the Silver Prince passed. Yet not every face reflected joy. In storm-lashed villages the small folk whispered of burning fields, of sons never returned, of a dragon prince who'd stolen a northern maid. Hope and hatred rode in equal measure behind the cavalcade. On the seventh day, the walls of King's Landing loomed, 3 immense crowns of stone and mortar. The city reeked of dung fires and fear. Ziga rumors had spread like pox. Stores had been hoarded, and the gold cloaks wore nerves upon their sleeves. Above the Red Keep flew the great crimson dragon of House Targaryen, though its wings seemed to shiver in the smoky wind. Rhaegar dismounted within the mud-slick courtyard, his cloak heavy with river silt, and ascended the steps to the throne room. Each footfall echoed like the ringing of a funeral bell. The hall beyond smelled of wildfire and sweat. Where once torchlight glimmered upon marble, now only a few candles guttered. King Aerys II perched atop the iron throne, gaunt as a starving bird, fingerbones wrapped round rusted blades. Grease and ash streaked the white of his beard. His eyes, molten violet, tracked his son's approach with predatory mania. When Rhaegar knelt, the High Septon's voice rose in ceremonial welcome. But Aerys cut him off with a rasping cackle. "So the hero returns," he crowed, words cracking like broken glass. "Did you find what you sought along the Trident, my son? Did you bring me the head of the usurper?" Rhaegar lifted Robert's hammer, half splintered, and laid it upon the steps. "He is dead, father. His army shattered. The realm is at peace." He chose the lie of optimism. The truth was more fragile. Aerys leaned forward until his robes snagged on jagged swords. "Peace. Peace." His laughter scraped bone. "There is no peace while traitors breathe. Burn them all." Spittle shone on cracked lips. He half rose, robes whispering like dead leaves. "And what of your Dornish wife? Where is my grandson? Where is my son's honor?" His gaze flickered to the woman standing behind Rhaegar. Lyanna, wrapped in a cloak of sable edged in gray. Fury lit the king's eyes brighter than wildfire. "Who is that wolf bitch you parade before me?" The hall froze. Steel rasped as Barristan stepped, white cloak sweeping the floor. Rhaegar lifted his chin. "My wife," he said, voice a clear bell. "Lyanna of House Stark, wed beneath the laws of gods and men. The prophecy is fulfilled, father. Ice and fire are joined." The king's shriek rattled the rafters. "Bigamy, blasphemy." He lifted a clawed hand toward the pyromancers lingering near the brazier. "Burn her, burn them all." Green fire leapt in their eyes, eager. Rhaegar rose in a fluid motion, hand on Dark Sister's hilt. "No." One word, yet it cut through the hall like a drawn sword. Kingsguard shifted. Jaime Lannister, pale and tight-lipped beside the throne, flinched. The High Septon muttered prayers none heard. Aerys recoiled, fury shrinking into suspicion. He saw then not a dutiful son, but a rival. Somewhere deep beneath his crown, madness giggled. That night, storm clouds swirled above the city, thunderheads pregnant with rage. Lyanna's chambers overlooked Blackwater Bay, where lanterns bobbed on anchored war galleys. She watched them a while, fingers curled round iron bars. Her breath misted the glass. When the door opened, she did not turn. "I thought you would come sooner," she said. Footsteps paused behind her. She saw his reflection in the window, pale hair loose, eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. She spoke softly. "He will not yield. You know that." Rhaegar answered with silence. He felt the realm in his veins, blood coursing with too many banners, too many voices. Elia waited in a distant tower with their children. He had yet to face her. Dorne's armies mustering, the reach uncertain. Tywin Lannister still locked behind his golden gates. And above all, his father's madness, coiled about the throne like a serpent in heat. "We will wed publicly," he murmured at last, stepping closer until her reflection eclipsed his. "Before the city, before the 7. Then no man can doubt us. He sounded almost convinced. Lyanna closed her eyes. They will doubt us regardless. I am no queen in their eyes. I am a pup stolen from the den. She turned, face pale in moonlight. But I will not run. If fire is our lot, let us burn together. 2 days later, bells tolled across King's Landing. The great sept of Baelor filled with throngs, lords in silk, hedge knights in patched cloaks, and small folk crushed like barley beneath a millstone, all eager to witness scandal draped in silk. Outside, gold cloaks struggled to keep order. Whispers darted faster than ravens. Inside the sept, the air shimmered with the smell of incense and sweat. Elia Martell watched from a gallery above, thin as a reed, the Dornish sun fading in her eyes. Her children clutched her skirts, Rhaenys wide-eyed, little Aegon gnawing on a ribbon. She stood straighter than any queen, but her heart hammered like a caged bird. When the High Septon began the binding words, Elia pressed a kiss atop her daughter's head and whispered, "Remember this day, Nina. Dragons do not always devour each other. But when they do, the world trembles." Below, Rhaegar and Lyanna knelt upon an altar of white marble. He wore black velvet chased with rubies. She wore a gown of dusky blue, the color of twilight over the neck. Candles flickered in tall stands, casting halos of gold upon their faces. When the Septon placed the silk ribbon around their joined hands, murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind on a wheat field. Some gasped at the absence of Craven Ares. Others at the sight of Brandon Stark's younger sister, alive and unbroken. Alliances shifted with every breath. Yet in that moment, Rhaegar heard none of it. Lyanna's smile was tentative, fragile as spring ice upon a pond, but it was real. He felt her pulse beneath his thumb, quick as a colt's, and the music in his soul swelled. Prophecy coiled tighter, destiny tasted of myrrh and winter apples. When they rose, husband and wife before gods and men, Rhaegar believed, if only for an instant, that the realm had moved beyond war. The illusion shattered before the torches burned low. Word arrived upon a dust-choked messenger that Jon Arryn held the Eyrie still. The Vale refused submission. In the Stormlands, the bastard Eddard Storm rallied Robert's remnants, naming himself Storm King beneath banners painted hurriedly in a maester's ink. Stannis Baratheon, wounded yet alive, fortified Storm's End and refused any offer of clemency. In the Riverlands, Hoster Tully wept for daughters wed to traitors, yet sharpened spears beneath stone bridges. The realm did not want peace. It wanted answers, or vengeance. Rhaegar summoned the small council. Grand Maester Pycelle droned of supply lines. Lord Commander Gerald Hightower spoke of garrisons. Varys, ever the spider, whispered of wildfire caches hidden beneath the city streets, laid by Aerys order. Jaime Lannister stood silently, golden head bowed, as though praying to a god none in the hall could name. When Rhaegar declared his intention to name new heirs, children born of ice and fire, to ensure the prophecy, Pycelle coughed behind sleeve and muttered of precedent. Hightower asked one quiet question, what of Queen Elia's claim? And for long moments, only the drip of melted wax answered. Lyanna walked the godswood within Maegor's holdfast, alone except for silent weirwood faces. Autumn brushed the leaves crimson, and the heart tree's red sap oozed like tears upon its trunk. She knelt beside the black pool, breath catching at the mirror image of the sky within the water. She missed the smell of snow, the howl of direwolves. Yet she felt the child quicken within her, fluttering as a bird against the cage of her ribs. She pressed hands to her belly and whispered of Winterfell under summer skies, of brothers who fought and laughed and dreamed. "We are not lost," she promised, unsure whether she spoke to the babe or herself. In Dorne, the Red Viper's laughter turned to steel. Oberyn Martell paced the bloodyard of Sunspear, spear sparking against stone. "He breaks marriage vows as easily as harp strings," he hissed, and the sand round him scorched beneath his fury. Prince Doran urged patience, his gout-ridden foot propped on cushions. Yet letters flew north like darts. To the Reach, to the Westerlands, to the Vale. Some spoke of alliance, others of vengeance. In High Garden, Mace Tyrell weighed roses and dragons upon his scales. Golden petals fell like coins into hopeful hands. Tywin Lannister watched the stars from a lonely balcony in Casterly Rock. At his side, Maester Kevin unrolled tidings. Robert slain, rebellion quelled, yet unease thick as smoke. The old lion's face betrayed nothing. But in a quiet chamber deep within the rock, raven ink marked parchment. Calculations of dowry, of swords, of grudges. Rhaegar's new queen posed problems. Problems bred opportunity. Aerys, caged within his own throne room, gnawed at raw fingers until blood slicked iron. He muttered names to torchlit walls. Traitor, usurper, son. His dreams brimmed with green fire, with screams echoing through tunnels beneath the city. The master of the pyromancers bowed low, promising flames that would lick the stars. Burn them, the king sighed, soot-coating cracked lips. Burn the false queen, burn the wolf's pups, burn the city if need be. He slept little, ate less, and in waking hours peered over battlements, searching for traitors in every shadow. Jaime watched him, hand never straying from the gilded hilt of his sword. Winter descended upon the north like a silent axe. At Winterfell, Catelyn Tully comforted a bedridden Brandon, his hands splinted from the irons Aerys had used to imprison him before the war. Maester Luwin brought news of Lyanna alive, wed to the Dragon Prince, heavy with child. Wolf howls, answered the ravens. Rickard Stark, head high yet heart hollow, called banners once more. Snow fell upon the great keep as men sharpened axes. They had bent the knee to save their lord's heirs, but oaths fretted under the weight of dragonfire. Back in King's Landing, Lyanna withdrew into rooms fragrant with burning spruce. Each window shuddered against the city's clamor. She wrote letters north, pages smudged by tears that would not fall. Rhaegar visited nightly, bringing tales of small council debates, of riots sparked outside Dragonstone Gate. He played the harp for her sometimes, notes soft as first snow. Yet even music could not drown the rattle of chains forging in the smithy below for the city's new defenses. She felt the iron thrones pull upon him, harder each day. She knew a battlefield when she saw one. When spring buds trembled on bare branches, Aerys demanded the court assemble in the throne room at dusk. Torches smoked with pine tar. Wildfire's sickly glow crept in corners. Heralds cried titles until throats cracked. Then the king appeared, garbed in robes dyed the color of dried blood, crown askew upon lank hair. He spoke of traitors, of wolves and lions, and doves painting themselves as dragons. He dismissed Rhaegar from the line of succession, naming instead young Viserys, still a child suckling fear from loss. Gasps rippled through the court like thrown stones. Rhaegar stood motionless, silver hair gleaming like a drawn blade, but his silence was thunder. That night, Jaime found the king whispering to pyromancers in the bowels of the Red Keep. Flames guttered in green-tinted pots. Aerys' tongue lolled as he recited stashes of wildfire. Beneath Septon Street, beneath Gate of the Gods, beneath Flea Bottom, beneath the Dragon Pit. Let them see my justice, he crooned. Voice dripping lunacy. Jaime clenched fists until nails bit flesh. Upon the morrow, the prince called banners of his own. Dawn spilled crimson across Blackwater Bay as trumpets wailed from the city walls. Gold cloaks hurried to gates. Small folk prayed. Elia Martell pleaded audience, children in tow. Her face drawn but unbroken. She spoke of honor, of shattered vows, of Dornish spears that might yet save the realm if only the prince would remember his first love. Rhaegar listened, heart splitting. He promised safety for her and the children, and sent them to Dragonstone, guarded by loyal knights. Elia's eyes held storms as she left, a queen walking from her own life. Ned Stark stood imprisoned in the Tower of the Hand, moonlight patterning bars across stone. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, and when the cell door opened, Rhaegar entered alone. No guards, no swords. Just two men, and too many ghosts. Ned rose, chains clanking. She loves you still, Ned said without preamble. But she is not yours to keep if you bring the world down around her ears. Rhaegar regarded him a long moment. And if I keep the world from falling? Ned's laugh was hoarse. Then perhaps I will kneel. But you must be dragon and wolf both, or you will be devoured by fire and snow. They spoke until dawn, exchanging truths and concessions. When Rhaegar left, he ordered Ned's chain struck off. The next day, Lord Stark walked free within the city. An omen few understood, a direwolf pacing beside dragons. Yet omens piled like tinder. In the west, Tywin Lannister finally moved. Golden host streaming east beneath banners of roaring crimson. In the Reach, Mace Tyrell declared for King Aerys, though rumor claimed his raven carried another letter for Rhaegar. The Dornish spears remained silent, sands waiting for one drop of blood to tilt the balance. Storm's End withstood siege. The Vale's Knights of the Moon sharpened lances. War's maw opened again, ready to swallow the fragile peace hewn at the Trident. Lyanna felt contractions begin beneath a sickle moon. Maester Gerardis hastened, midwives in tow Datau. Rhaegar knelt beside her bed. Harp silent at last. Pain racked her, each wave carving her bones. She gripped his hand, knuckles white. "Promise me." She breathed between screams. "Promise me, Rhaegar, our child will not be your crown." He kissed her brow, tasting salt. Outside, snowflakes drifted on a wind too cold for King's Landing. A northern blessing, or a warning. At dawn, the cry of a newborn split the gloom. A boy squalling like a wounded raven, tiny fists curled. Dark hair plastered his head, yet when his eyes opened, they were pools of deep indigo. Old as prophecy, Lyanna wept quietly. Exhaustion and joy tangled. Rhaegar whispered the name that had lived in his dreams. Aemon, a song of ice and fire made flesh. Word flew on raven wings across the realm. The prince had sired another son, a child of Stark and Targaryen blood, whose birthright glimmered like dawn upon fresh snow. Some rejoiced, seeing hope. Others saw threat. In Sunspear, Oberyn's spear snapped in his grip. In the Eyrie, Jon Arryn closed his eyes and prayed for balance. In Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister smiled without mirth, and spoke of marriage pacts and debts of blood. Aerys raged. He ordered the child seized, yet none moved. King or no, his voice rang hollow. Guards whispered of green wildfires. Smallfolk whispered of the Mad King who would burn them alive. Fear is a sword that blunts with use. Still, the king planned. He sent ravens to Old Town, summoning the faith militant to denounce the bastard union. He courted the Tarleys and the Florents. He promised lordships, gold, absolution through flame. Each day his shadow lengthened down the halls. Spring stumbled toward summer. The Red Keep seethed, heat trapped beneath stone. Rhaegar drilled with knights in the yard, silver armor glinting. He conferred with Stark, Selmy, Went, and even Varys on stratagems to unseat his father without drowning the realm in dragonfire. Choices narrowed like a noose. Assassination? Abdication? A king's honor tangled with a son's duty. He felt the weight of prophecy, yet prophecy gave no counsel on madness. Lyanna walked gardens wilting beneath southern sun, child in sling against her breast. She watched ladies in jewel-bright gowns whisper and avert their eyes. She heard the songs of street minstrels twist, some praising the Wolf Queen, others calling her the downfall of dragons. She felt alone, an island of northern snow, adrift in a sea of poisoned wine. Yet when the babe cooed, small fingers curling round a lock of her hair, she found courage enough for 10,000 songs. On a blistering afternoon, Jaime Lannister knelt before the prince in the throne room. Golden head bowed. "My vows are to the king," he said, voice low. "But my honor is to the realm." He told of hidden wildfire caches, and of Aerys' intent to ignite them, should enemies breach the walls. Rhaegar's blood iced. He bid Jaime rise, thanked him, and dismissed the court. Alone he stood beneath the Iron Throne's shadow, imagining green flame consuming city and child alike. A choice crystallized, razor-sharp dotting. That night, the moon bled crimson as it rose. Rhaegar gathered 7 of his closest, and most trusted, Knights in the Hall of Dragonstone. Barristan Selmy, Gerald Hightower, Arthur Dane, Oswell Went, Ned Stark, John Connington, and Jaime Lannister swore blood oaths to preserve the realm. They would move on the morrow to seize the king and secure the wildfire. Nothing less would suffice. They named the plan Dragon's Mercy, though mercy seldom wears such grisly claws. Lyanna found Rhaegar upon the ramparts before dawn, wind tugging pale hair into his eyes. She stood beside him, babe asleep against her heart. "You go to war again," she said, not a question. He answered with a nod faint as fall of snow. She offered no reproach. Winter's bred resilience. Instead, she pressed a bundle into his hands, a single river ruby mounted on a leather thong. "For luck," she said. He could not speak, so he kissed her, the salt of her tears mingling with his. Then he turned, cloak swirling like a raven's wing, and descended into the darkness where kings are unmade. The Red Keep woke to thunder, not of storms, but of steel. Kingsguard clashed in narrow corridors, torches toppled, sparks skittering. Barristan faced Boros Blount before the king's door, white cloaks stained scarlet where blades found flesh. Jaime burst through, golden armor catching dawnlight. Aerys shrieked when he saw them, flecks of foam on lips. "Traitors!" he screamed, scrambling toward hidden levers designed to flood the city with green hell. Jaime's sword flashed once. Blood sizzled on iron. When the sun crested the walls, bells tolled again. Small folk looked up, hearts clenched, expecting smoke and fire. Instead, they saw the banners of the prince unfurled across the battlements, sigils sewn half red, half stark gray. A white wolf and a three-headed dragon entwined. Cry rose upon cry, confusion mixing with cheer. Rumor outraced fact. The Mad King dead, the prince crowned, the Wolf Queen mother to a new dawn. In the throne room, Rhaegar seated himself upon the Iron Throne for the first time. Its blades bit through silk into flesh, drawing a thin line of blood down his thigh. He welcomed the pain. It felt honest. Before him knelt the lords of Crownlands and Riverlands, sworn anew. Ned Stark offered fealty on behalf of the North, words measured and grave. Tywin Lannister arrived at dusk, golden cloak sweeping marble, offering condolences and loyalty both, tongue gilded as a lion's roar. He brought with him precious gifts, wagon loads of provisions for the hungry city, and the assurance that Casterly Rock stood with House Targaryen. Rhaegar accepted, knowing poison sometimes hid in honey. That night, torches flared along the city walls in silent vigil for the fallen king. Some lamented, some thanked the Seven. In a quiet chamber, Jaime Lannister removed his white cloak and set it upon a wooden chest. He stared at it a long while before stepping into the corridor. Shadows swallowing him whole. In Sunspear, Oberyn Martell received tidings of Aerys's death. He laughed, a jagged sound, and poured wine upon the sand as libation. Elia, safe upon Dragonstone, heard rumors of her husband's coronation beside the Northern Wolf. She walked the seawall at dusk. Salty wind, tearing tears from her eyes. She thought of her children, of Dornish songs of vengeance, of a realm ever in motion. Thus a fragile peace settled, no thicker than parchment, no sturdier than a newborn's bones. Summer clouds gathered over Blackwater Bay, heavy with promise and threat. Rhaegar held council daily, drafting decrees of reconciliation, planning marriages to mend the rents of war. He named John Connington Hand of the King, Ned Stark Warden of the North, and assured the faith that justice would temper mercy. Yet whispers slithered beneath tapestries of Lannister ambitions, Martell grudges, Tyrell opportunism, of a bastard Baratheon gathering exiles on Shipbreaker Bay. Lyanna nursed her son beneath a lattice of blooming red roses imported from Highgarden, and listened to the thrum of the city beyond. She heard laughter, weeping, the clang of forge hammers, the scrape of distant waves. She tasted copper in the water still, memory of the Trident refusing to fade. She wondered if prophecy could anchor happiness, or if it merely weighed hearts down until they sank. One evening, Rhaegar joined her upon the terrace, overlooking the gardens. The setting sun bled orange across tiled roofs. He took their child into his arms, marveling anew at the fragile miracle of fingers wrapped around his thumb. "He smiles like you," Lyanna said, leaning into his shoulder. Rhaegar kissed the crown of her head. "Then the realm is blessed," he whispered. Yet his gaze drifted across the city, where flickers of green luminescence lingered in sewer grates. Wildfire yet unfound. Danger slept uneasily beneath their feet. Storms brewed on every horizon. Ravens arrived bearing news that Stannis Baratheon had sieged Storm's End anew. Banners of a crowned stag aflame in gold. In the Vale, young Lord Robert Arryn, frail, coughing, had yielded to his mother's regents, who favored neutrality. Mace Tyrell offered 50,000 men to protect the capital in exchange for betrothal of his daughter Margaery to Prince Aegon. Doran Martell sent polite letters, no promises. Old Town's High Septon began whispers of annulment, of secret polygamy sinful in the sight of the Seven. Rhaegar played his harp in the throne room late at night, notes spiraling beneath tarnished chandeliers. Barristan Selmy kept watch, white cloak billowing ever so slightly with each chord. Together they spoke of duty and dreams, and of the weight of crowns. "A king must build," Rhaegar said, fingers drifting across silver strings. "My father destroyed. I will not repeat his song." Barristan nodded, yet fear haunted the lines around his eyes. Even the most valiant knights knew songs could curdle. Deep within the Red Keep, blind men hammered melted swords into railings, forging a new stair for the Tower of the Hand. Each strike rang like prophecy reshaped. Above, Lyanna taught little Rhaenys to braid flowers through her brother's dark hair. The princess laughed, scattering petals like snow. Elia watched, smile tremulous but real. A wolf and a dragon and a sun-kissed rose, all together. For a heartbeat, the realm glimpsed another path, where love outshone ambition. But paths are fragile things. On the anniversary of Rhaegar's victory at the Trident, a feast filled the throne room with music and roasting boar. Lords raised jeweled cups, toasting peace and plenty. Outside the walls, commoners danced beneath lanterns strung across muddy streets. In a corner of the Dragon Pit ruins, cloaked figures moved with purpose, their voices low. Barrels, slim and sealed, rolled into forgotten tunnels. Wildfire glimmered faintly through cracks. At the feast's height, a singer from Bravos performed a haunting ballad of Nymeria crossing the narrow sea. Lyanna's eyes glistened. Rhaegar reached for her hand beneath the table. Then the floor trembled, faint as a heartbeat. Cutlery rattled. Somewhere distant, thunder rolled. Though no storm brewed, a hush fell over the hall. Rhaegar rose, a warning burning behind his eyes. A second rumble. Stronger. Cracks spidered across marble. Screams rose outside, wild, terrified. Barristan drew steel as chandeliers swung, candles raining sparks. The Iron Throne loomed, unmoved amid chaos. Rhaegar's voice sliced through panic. "To the gates! Protect the people!" Knights scrambled. Lyanna clutched the baby, Elia gathering children under her cloak. Varys slipped between pillars like smoke. Ned Stark barreled toward the exit, sword raised, shouting for his sister. Then the world erupted. Green flame roared from sewer grates, geysers of emerald hate. The sky above Flea Bottom turned to glass, reflecting inferno. The city's shriek was a thing alive. The Red Keep shuddered, stone protesting the betrayal of its foundations. Wildfire, once chained, was free. Rhaegar shoved through the crowd, cloak aflame at the hem, desperation propelling him toward the courtyard. He shouted commands, his voice hoarse. Barristan led a wedge of guards to bucket brigades forming at the wells. Jaime appeared, bloodied, half his white cloak scorched to black. Together they bellowed orders, trying to carve sense from chaos. In the maiden vault, Lyanna pressed wet cloth over the babe's mouth, smoke curling beneath doors like hungry fingers. Elia pushed Rhaenys and Aegon toward a secret passage revealed to her by a Dornish guard. Stone groaned overhead, dust raining. Thunderous cracks echoed as towers shifted. They fled into darkness, the only light the glow of wildfire far below. All across the city, chaos reigned. Some fled toward the river, leaping from walls into black water. Others sought the sept, praying between choking coughs. Hightower and Dane led cavalry through gates blasted ajar, trampling burning debris to open paths for innocence. Yet for every soul saved, 2 perished, consumed by flame or crushed beneath falling masonry. By dawn the fires still raged, pillars of green against a sky washed pale with smoke. The dragon pit's dome collapsed with a roar, sending a cloud of ash over Visenya's hill. The sept of Baelor stood, though its stained glass windows melted into grotesque art. Bodies littered streets in charred heaps. The smell, godless, unforgettable, hung over ruin. In the throne room, daylight revealed devastation. Half the roof gone, iron throne toppled, melted swords fused into slag. Rhaegar knelt amid wreckage, soot coating silver hair, hands scorched and bleeding. Jaime and Barristan stood beside him, silent. He lifted his eyes to them, tears carving clean paths down cheeks, and whispered, "We have lost what cannot be rebuilt." Yet as the day wore on, survivors emerged from hidden tunnels, small folk, septons, guards, and gathered in the scorched square before the Red Keep. They looked to the prince who had become their king, not by right of sword alone, but by endurance. He rose, voice raw but steady. He spoke of rebuilding, of justice for those who set the fires, of a future tempered by grief rather than ruled by it. He vowed to empty treasuries if need be, to feed and house every soul. He swore the old dragon's madness died with the night's inferno. Lyanna, soot-streaked but alive, stood with Elia upon the balcony above, their children held close. Sunlight caught in Lyanna's dark hair, turning it to a banner of hope. She met Rhaegar's gaze across the ruin, and something unspoken passed between them. Resolve or defiance, perhaps both. Ned Stark, arm bound in splints, joined the king, voice carrying above the hushed crowd. Winter teaches us that what falls may rise again, if the roots run deep. He raised his sword, point down, and planted it in shattered stone. One by one, others followed. Hightower, Dane, Went, Connington, Lannister, until a circle of steel framed the king. The gesture spoke louder than any oath. And so amidst ashes and twisted iron, the first stones of a new realm were laid, not with triumph, but with shared suffering. The realm watched, weary yet unwilling to surrender to darkness. Rhaegar Targaryen, scarred by flame and fate, lifted his son high so all might see. The infant's dark eyes blinked at ruined sky, and a hush stole across the courtyard. In that breathless silence, hope felt possible. But beyond the smoking hills, armies yet marched, banners yet flew, and hearts yet thirsted for vengeance or ambition or both. The tale of ice and fire had only begun its slow, relentless turning. And in hidden crypts beneath the Red Keep, where wildfire had not yet reached, shadows stirred, whispering of debts unpaid, of secrets buried with a mad king's corpse, of the thin line that divides prophecy from peril. For though a dragon had won a crown and a wolf worn queenly garb, the Game of Thrones is played in countless moves, and the board spares no pieces. So the realm drew breath, battered but unbroken, and waited for the next song to be sung. Kai. Smoke still curled from the broken teeth of the city walls, though 4 days had passed since the night when green fire clawed at heaven. Dawn light crept gingerly across the ruin, reluctant to touch so many blackened bones. In every quarter of King's Landing, men and women picked through rubble in silence, the hush of collective shock broken only by the clink of displaced stones or the muffled sob of someone finding a shape too small to be grown. Above them all, the Red Keep loomed like a half-raised colossus, its proud towers nicked and scorched, and here and there, split to reveal jagged interiors of singed tapestries and cracked marble. Yet life moved. Bakers kneaded flour thick with ash. Butchers salted whatever meat they could save. Children, soot-streaked and barefoot, chased each other in games that only pretended to ignore the smell. On the 5th morning, Rhaegar walked a length of rainy sill, with only Barristan Selmy for company. He wore plain gray wool, his signet hidden, though every citizen knew the silver hair and the way he held his shoulders as though balancing an unseen crown. Barristan's white cloak had been scoured but not replaced. Its new stains were the kind that never truly washed out. They paused at the edge of what had once been a narrow market street, now sunk into a crater of fused stone where wildfire had blossomed hottest. The prince crouched, fingertips hovering over a glassy lump that might once have been a cobble. In its surface, the melted reflection of the sky trembled, warped. He saw a smear of himself, bent and broken. When he rose, his voice was quiet enough that even the wind dared not interrupt. "Count every dead," he told Barristan. "Name them on parchment. If we cannot give each a tomb, we will give them memory. A bard will sing their names until the lists take half a day to recite." "Damn?" Barristan nodded, though grief weighted the motion. "And the living, your grace. All coin the crown holds will feed them before the month is out. If the granaries of the Reach remain full, we will buy. If they will not sell, we will take loan against the Lannister coffers with Tywin's consent, or without it." The old knight did not flinch. "And if Lord Tywin demurs?" Rhaegar's gaze traveled beyond the crater to the distant spar of smoke on the western horizon, where supply caravans once entered the Lion Gate. "Then gold will be cheaper than blood," he said, "but I will pay either coin." The words carried a chill deeper than winter snow. By midday he stood upon the battlements of the Mud Gate, overlooking a line of refugees snaking into the city. Many came from the outlying villages of the Roserwad, homes torched by bandits in the chaos, or by opportunistic sellswords who carried no banner. The Crown's little officer corps, hastily expanded by Sir John Connington, could not police every league of road. Yet Rhaegar refused to bar the gates. "Better a hungry subject than a dead stranger," he had said. And so the ragged procession wound inward, swollen as a tide with each sunrise. Lyanna joined him there. Swaddled child nestled at her breast, beneath a cloak of black wool stitched with silver thread direwolves. Her face, pale from sleepless nights, held a strained tenderness like frost over autumn apples. She watched the refugees file past, saw the gaunt cheeks and the vacant stares, and felt every hollow stomach as a tug upon her own ribs. "They stare at me." She whispered, not as complaint but as bewilderment. "They stare at hope," he answered. "They do not yet know what shape hope takes." He reached for her free hand, fingers sliding into the spaces between hers. "Nor do I. But we will learn." A herald's trumpet echoed down the quay. 3 bright notes, the agreed signal that a delegation approached under truce. Rhaegar turned, scanning the upriver bend where the Mander's broad green current met the Blackwater. There, striking gold even in the weak sun, rode banners of the Reach, a verdant field sown with lilies and roses. At their head a barge sailed, oars stroking in perfect cadence, bearing Mace Tyrell, his son Garland, and most striking, his young daughter Margaery. She stood at the prow, in a cloak of blush-pink wool, dark hair loose, hands clasped over the rail, as if holding fast to courage. Word had preceded them. The Tyrell host marched behind, 20,000 strong, though only a modest honor guard would enter the city. Rhaegar exhaled a breath that misted in the cool morning. "The game begins anew," he murmured. For though the Reach's aid could staunch the capital's bleeding, he knew Mace Tyrell bartered generosity like a silk-clad usurer. Every sweet offer hit a hook. They received the delegation in what remained of the throne room. Scaffolding webbed overhead where masons labored to shore cracked pillars. The Iron Throne itself lay toppled still, a grotesque sculpture at the chamber's far end, half sunk into rubble. Rhaegar met the Tyrells before that ruin, flanked by Jon Connington and Ned Stark, whose arm rested in a sling of indigo silk. Mace Tyrell swept into a low bow, brilliantly plumed cape brushing cinders. When he straightened, his cheeks glowed with the ruddy assurance of well-fed ambition. "Your Grace," he boomed, voice echoing in the half-hollow hall. "The Reach bears your grief as its own. We bring bread where traitors left ash, and swords where cowards left daggers." He gestured, and servants unrolled bolts of linen at Rhaegar's feet. Maps of granary tallies, grain shipments, marshaled troops. Connington bent over them, brow furrowing at columns of generous numbers. Rhaegar said nothing, waiting. Macy's smile widened. "All we ask in return is that the realm's future be sealed with roses. Aegon, your fine heir of Elias' womb, is near 6, is he not? Marjorie is 8 but wise beyond her years. Let their betrothal symbolize rebirth from these flames." At this, young Margaery stepped forward and curtsied with grace molded by a dozen septas. Her wide brown eyes flicked to the fallen throne. Then to Rhaegar's face. Curiosity without fear. Admiration without cunning. The prince felt a pang. The child's innocence deserved a kinder bargain. He opened his mouth, but Ned spoke first, voice even as winter river ice. "A generous offer, Lord Tyrell. Yet this is more than courtship. Where stands High Garden upon questions of sovereignty? Will your lordships kneel to the king we now have, or to claimants yet unseated?" Macy's answering chuckle was oily. "Why, to the crowned dragon, of course. But where dragons multiply, questions of succession sprout like dandelions. We would see that matter trimmed neat, with roses for wreaths." Rhaegar raised a hand for silence. "The matter of my children's futures cannot be bartered in the shadow of still smoking corpses." He let the words hang, cold and hard. "Yet your aid is welcome. My steward will allocate storehouses for your grain. Men of the Reach may quarter in the Rivergate barracks until billets are prepared." He inclined his head by a hair. "When King's Landing breathes freely again, we shall speak of alliances." Macy's smile dimmed, but he bowed once more. "The Reach awaits your pleasure, your grace." They withdrew, and the hall fell silent, save for distant hammer blows. Rhaegar walked past the maps and the scraps of rose petals Mace's pages had scattered, bending over the Iron Throne's twisted side. A dagger-sharp blade of an ancient conquest jutted skyward. He drew a finger along its edge until blood bloomed. Connington hissed, but Rhaegar only regarded the crimson bead. "Every seat of power asks price," he murmured. "Some demand payment at once, others in yearly tithes. I begin to understand which is crueler." That night, the small council convened in a solar stripped of finery. Tapestries lost to flame, rugs rolled away to reveal scorched boards. Candles guttered, their tallow smoke clinging to stone. John Connington, cheeks hollow from sleeplessness, reported that patrols along the Roserad had intercepted 3 bands of armed men bearing the crown stag sigil hastily painted upon crusted shields. "Stannis outriders, probing for weakness," Sir Gerald Hightower added grim tidings from the west. Tywin Lannister, while professing loyalty, marched now with 30,000, ostensibly to protect supply trains headed east. His route crept too near the fertile riverlands, and too near Mace Tyrell's converging columns. "Lions and roses sniffed the same kill," he finished, voice like distant thunder. "And the Dornish?" Rhaegar asked. Silence answered until Varys unfolded pale hands. "Prince Doran's ships linger off the stepstones, your grace, neither sailing north nor returning south. Letters from Sunspear praise your clemency toward Princess Elia, but pledge no swords. The sand snakes, however, cast longer shadows in Myr and Lys, daggers seeking hilts." Rhaegar's nails tapped the edge of a plain pine chair. Each realm arrayed like pieces on some monstrous Savas board, every lord weighing advantage. And beneath it all, his people picked bones of the capital for food. "We will not play at war again," he said, each word slow. "The crown will host a great council at Harrenhal in 3 moons' time. There we will confirm succession, debate grievances, renew oaths, invite every great and lesser lord who can travel. If they will not heed crown summons, they announce themselves rebels and will be treated as such." Connington's brows rose. "Harrenhal still smolders. Its towers crumble." "All the better," Ned observed. "Ash reminds men what fire costs." Barristan bowed his head. "It will take half our remaining treasury to feed such a host." "Then we spend it," Rhaegar replied. "Better coin on bread than iron on graves." Later, he stood alone before a tall arched window staring into night. Below, Lamplight twinkled where carpenters raised a field kitchen to feed refugees. Moonlight limned the city's scars with silver, gentling their savagery. He pressed his brow against cool glass and closed his eyes. Visions came unbidden. A wall of ancient ice groaning in darkness. Shadows moving in forests of pale trees. A song on the wind, distant yet insistent, a chord of his harp he had never played. The future's breath suffocated him. When Lyanna's hand brushed his shoulder, he startled, and shame warmed his throat. "You do not sleep," she murmured. "Even when your body lies beside mine, you wander." He took her hand, turning to rest his forehead against her knuckles. "I fear that if I close my eyes, the world will split again." "It may," she said, voice soft but firm. "Yet you are not its only pillar." She guided his fingers to her heart. "Steady beneath wool. Rest a while. Let the rest of us bear it." So he did, drifting at last into slumber to the faint lullaby of distant hammers and the slower rhythm of her breathing. While King's Landing rebuilt, Tywin Lannister camped along the tumblestone, red banners shivering in gusts that smelled of wet wheat. He sat beneath a silk pavilion studying a carved wood Sivasa board, placing lion-headed pieces against rose and dragon. Sir Kevan stood opposite, brow furrowed, but the Lord of Casterly Rock played without opponent, shifting both sides until the pattern pleased him. At last he slid a golden lion across squares to topple a silver dragon. "Supply lines," he said, as if the move explained everything. "Cut them, and the beast starves. Offer feed and it tames." Kevan cleared his throat. "The Reach marches east. They will arrive at King's Landing in less than a fortnight. If we keep to the roads, we cannot intercept, not without open war against Highgarden." Tywin's eyes, flecked emerald, did not waver from the board. "Against Highgarden, no. Against Mace Tyrell's vanity, perhaps." He flicked a rose piece aside. "I will not be chained by a boy in silver silk who thinks prophecy grants him rule." A long pause. "And if that wolf girl queen bears more heirs, half the realm will claim dragons grow from snow now. Targaryens lose mystique when they breed like river cats." He rose, beckoning Kevan to follow. Outside, soldiers drilled in ordered rows, spears gleaming. Beyond, wagons hauled barrels of grain and iron-bound chests, spoils meant as gifts for the capital. Tywin's gaze swept his men, pride hidden beneath calculation. "We will march within a day," he declared. "Yet not to King's Landing. We turn south along the river, then east to Bitterbridge. Let Mace pass north of us. When he extends his supply wagons to feed that burned city, he will discover his horses watered from wells we own." Kevan hesitated. "Will the crown not see blockade as treason?" "Blockade?" Tywin's smile was a knife barely unsheathed. "I provide security. Bandits plague the river. It would be neglectful to leave royal grain unguarded." He glanced skyward, where clouds stacked like mountains. "And if dragons starve, perhaps they learn who truly carries the realm's purse." Southward in the Dornish Sea, a sleek galley bore Oberyn Martell over salt waves. He lounged at the prow, crimson cloak snapping, eyes narrowed against spray. Sunspear dwindled astern, a prickle of tawny walls and haze. Before him lay the storms of court, wind he longed to taste as only the Red Viper could. In his cabin, a cedar chest held vials of poison perfumed like lilies, and a folded parchment bearing the sigils of certain sell-sail captains. He hummed a lullaby once sung to Rhaenys and Aegon, and felt his blood heat. Vengeance and justice traveled the same road in his mind, and it ended at King's Landing. On Dragonstone, Elia watched the sundial in the garden court, track the slow creep of shadow. Her children chased each other around dragon gargoyles, giggling when gulls startled skyward. She felt the sea wind cold through her shawl, and wondered if the chill came from outside, or from the hollow now carved beside her heart. Letters arrived daily from Rhaegar, kind words inked over updates of grain tallies. He wrote of missing the children, of rebuilding, of counsels and prophecies. To each, she replied with measured affection. But at night, alone save for the susurrus of waves, she pressed her palm to her ribs and asked herself what love meant when promises bent like rushes in wind. Maester Kelvin brought her rumors from the port. Sailors whispering of wildfire sabotage plotted by broken pyromancers, of Lannister gold hidden in wine casks that found their way beneath the city. Some whispered worse, that the crown itself had fanned flames to purge dissent, then blamed phantoms. Elia dismissed such chatter, yet seed of doubt took root where trust starved. At Storm's End, stone walls echoed with the ring of hammer on anvil. Stannis Baratheon surveyed new ballistae being winched into place above the gatehouse. Eddard Storm, Robert's acknowledged bastard, thick-shouldered and black of hair, knelt by a map on a makeshift table, marking troop movements with charcoal. They had scraped together a host of minor lords. Penrose, Fell, Buckler, some Florents whose loyalty wobbled like a drunkard. Enough, perhaps, to harry Crownland's supply lanes. A raven landed upon the parapet, bearing news of the Great Council. Stannis read the scroll, jaw clenched. The parchment crumpled in his fist. A council in a burned ruin, he muttered. A stage for dragons to preen while charred smallfolk wipe ash from their eyes. He glanced at Eddard Storm. We will attend, but not to bend knee. His voice flinted sparks in cold air. If Rhaegar seeks to mend the realm, let him answer for my brother's death, for the North's grievances, and for Wildfire's murder of innocents. Justice before concord. Eddard tensed. Many call Robert a rebel. Some even call him usurper. Rebel, usurper, corpse, Stannis said. Whatever name they use, he was the realm's greatest shield against Targaryen tyranny. Now the shield lies shattered, and the sword that broke it claims virtue. He looked toward the sea, where storm clouds massed dark as iron. We will be the storm that reminds men of broken oaths. 2 moons crawled across the sky before the appointed month for Harrenhal. In that time King's Landing grew less corpse and more convalescent. New thatch covered shop roofs. Trade barges crept upriver, bearing lumber from Black Tide and barrel staves from Sisterton. The faith militant, revived in hushed alcoves of the starry sept, dispatched brothers to minister and, quietly, to listen. They heard confession of pyromancers vanished the night of fire, of gold cloaks bribed to open sally ports, of a masked rider leaving the city by river gate before dawn. Each story a fragment in a mosaic yet forming, but already the picture glinted Lannister gold. Within the Red Keep's forge, Master Armorer Donald Swift oversaw the reforging of the Iron Throne. With slag and quenched steel, he and his apprentices shaped new edges, dulling none. Rhaegar visited once, child in his arms. The smith laid a newly tempered sword before the king, black, honed, drake-winged. The throne bites, Donald warned. Rhaegar ran a thumb along the blade's groove. Sharp blades remind rulers that cutting wounds both ways, he said, then turned to leave. But he carried the sword, a gift of warning to himself. Lyanna spent mornings in the godswood that Ned and builders coaxed into existence within Maegor's holdfast, transplanted weirwoods from the Crownlands, their red leaves fluttering like silent prayers. She knelt beneath their white trunks, whispering stories of Winterfell to the babe. Over time, Septas ceased hovering. Wolfish faith had grown familiar as desert grass around Dragonstone. When a young novice dared ask if she prayed to old gods or new, Lyanna answered, "To any who listen, and to myself when none do." Word of that spread, and women who had lost children to the fire sought her counsel, finding comfort in a queen who bled heart's blood the same as theirs. No ceremony, no judgment, only winter steel wrapped in quiet mercy. Small folk began leaving tokens at the Godswood gate. River pebbles, ribbons dyed with onion skin, broken arrowheads. Lyanna gathered each and kept them in a wooden box beside her bed. Across the city, Jaime Lannister haunted taverns where soldiers of fortune bragged of deeds done for heavier purses than conscience. He drank little, listened much. One night a man too drunk to notice the lion brooch at Jaime's cloak boasted of guiding a wagon through the tunnels beneath the Hill of Rhaenys. "Full of green demon's piss. Enough to cook a kingdom." Jaime followed him into the night air, blade never drawn. questions flowing like mulled wine. Before dawn, the man sailed south with coin heavy in his pocket, and a warning heavier in his ear. Speak no more of dragon's secrets. Jaime reported to Varys, and so we'll lag word inside the Red Keep spiderweb. With each thread traced, scent of Casterly rock thickened. When the court set out for Harrenhal, the procession stretched 5 leagues. Banners of all colors, wagons of grain and timber, masons, tailors, bakers, musicians, smiths, heralds. Rhaegar rode at its head beneath a banner half-dragon, half-wolf, conspicuous and daring. Lyanna rode beside him astride a grey courser, sable cloak billowing. Elia followed in a gilt carriage, children peering from curtained windows, flanked by 100 Dornish spears. Connington took rear guard with Riverland levies, while Barristan commanded vanguard outriders. The road north revealed war's scars. Farmsteads abandoned, fields blighted where troops had trampled new sprouts. In villages lining the God's Eyes tributaries, small folk bowed, but their eyes held fear that men on horseback always brought. At each stop, Rhaegar distributed stores, leaving his own guard leaner of ration. Ned Stark hunted nightly, filling kettles with venison and trout. Margaery Tyrell visited makeshift infirmaries, weaving crowns of river lilies for wounded children. In these simple acts, alliances seeded more deeply than parchments. Harrenhal appeared upon the horizon like the melted crown of some giant king. Towers slumped, curtain walls scorched by dragonfire long ago. Yet its immense halls still stood enough to shelter thousands. As camps sprang in concentric rings about the ruin, a restless energy hummed. Lords assessing rivals, knights eyeing tournaments not yet announced, merchants tallying coin. Within 2 days, near every great banner of Westeros flapped somewhere about the blackened lake, the Kraken of the Iron Islands, Erin's falcon, Martell's sun and spear, Tarth's quartered field, even the pale Alyssum of House Hightower. Only the fiery heart-crowned stag of Stannis remained conspicuously distant, encamped on Harrenhal's eastern shore behind earthworks hastily raised. The first council convened in the Hall of 100 Hearths, though only 2 chimneys still drew smoke. Torches lit high arches where stones sagged. Rhaegar sat not upon any throne but on a plain oak chair at a long table. Beside him, Ned Stark and Jon Connington. To his right, Elia and Prince Oberyn. To his left, Lyanna, whose presence alone was statement. Seats for Tywin, Mace, Stannis, Doran, Hoster, Balon, and all lesser lords arrayed like too many pieces on not enough board. The murmurs that filled the hall died when Stannis strode over cracked flagstones, black cloak trailing like thundercloud. He faced Rhaegar across the table, and without bow or greeting, laid the iron-banded warhammer of Robert Baratheon upon the boards. Its head gleamed dully, hawks etched into its sides. "My brother's grievance still hangs over this realm," he said, voice hoarse but clear. "He died believing the Dragon Prince had stolen Lyanna Stark, and with her the honor of the realm. We now see Lyanna stands here, wed and mother of your son. Yet justice for the war's dead remains clouded. I demand an accounting." Then matter. A hush. Then Tywin's low chuckle drew a ripple of unease. "Justice from ashes," he mused. "If every death cried for coin, this realm would beggar the known world." Stannis' glare cut to him. "Some debts cannot be bought. They are paid in truth or in blood." Tywin's smile did not reach his eyes. "And you would measure that blood?" Mace Tyrell leaned forward, eager. But Rhaegar raised a hand. "Lord Stannis," he began, "your brother fell by my blade upon the Trident's banks. Holy in war's fury, but I do not deny the blow. If there is penance—" "Penance?" Stannis barked. "Penance will not rebuild towns ground to mud, nor feed orphaned babes." "No," Rhaegar conceded softly. "But we stand here to rebuild. I have opened the crown's vaults, levied no new taxes. I have reached to the Reach, to the Westerlands, to Dorne for grain. I summon this council so each lord may lend voice to rebuilding a realm, rather than carving pieces." Stannis' scowl deepened. Fine words. Yet the crown still claims primacy through fire and prophecy. What of succession when you have 2 queens? His gaze flicked between Elia and Lyanna like flint. What a bastardy recognition, bigamy. Will the faith bless your line? Eyes turned to the high septon robed in cloth of silver at table's far end. He rose, clearing his throat. Holiness does not lie in blood so much as in the deeds that sanctify it. Prince Rhaegar gained annulment of his first marriage with due right. Elia's chair scraped harshly. She stood, slim and unbowed. Annulment claimed without my knowledge. Gasps rippled. Yet I came for the realm's sake. Speak not of sanctity you did not witness, old man. Bah. Silence deeper than snow fell. Rhaegar's throat tightened. He reached for words, but none held weight enough. Then Lyanna stood also. Child asleep in her sling. Her voice carried like a clear northern wind. We stand alive where many we love do not. Does it matter which vow came first, if no vow stops the bleeding of small folk? Tywin's eyes gleamed. Mace shuffled, sensing advantage lost. Oberyn folded arms, assessing angles of vengeance yet unsatisfied. Across the table, Balon Greyjoy smirked, already counting how cracks could widen. Yet something in the hall shifted. Low murmur among lesser lords, who had walked burnt roads, who had seen Queen of Dragons and Queen of Wolves speak not of crowns, but of hunger. The cynical eye flickered to grudging respect. Councils hinge often on such small wins. Rhaegar seized that moment. Let the first order of this council be charter of relief. Every region pledges tithes, grain, coin, timber. Until next harvest, we will appoint road wardens drawn from all houses to patrol the king's roads. The faith shall oversee distribution, so none call bias. Many. The high septon nodded, caution warred with hope in his lined face. Stannis lowered gaze to the warhammer, thumb tracing battle nicks. Aid first, he muttered. Then truth. So the council adjourned with uneasy truce. That night, fires dotted the lakeshore like mirrored stars. Inside the ruined kitchens, cooks from half the realm turned soups with whatever grain or fowl their lords provided. Soldiers who once met in battle shared benches, trading jokes brittle with weariness. And somewhere beneath collapsed spires, skulking figures passed slips of parchment into calloused hands. Information for coin, allegiances for promises. Varys, robed in drab cloak, entered Rhaegar's makeshift solar as torches guttered low. He bowed deep. Your Grace, tidings. The pyromancer who oversaw the wildfire vaults has surfaced at Harrenhal, among the Tyrell camp. Shielded by Lord Mace's guards. Rhaegar's jaw set. Name him. Wisdom Hallany. Varys fingered a strand of silk at his sleeve. He fears execution, but perhaps desires absolution. Bring him secretly, Rhaegar commanded. If he confesses complicity, rose petals will run red. The spider bowed again, lips curving faintly. Some petals were always crimson, Your Grace. Before the hour turned, Hallie knelt in a cell lit by one candle. Sweat slicked his brow, though the night blew cool through barred windows. Rhaegar entered clad in simple riding tunic, a sword dagger at his hip. Barristan stood behind. The prince sent the night away with a look. Tell me, he said, crouching so their eyes met. Hallie's hands shook like leaves. It was commissioned, he whispered, voice rasped dry. A vault filled years past at the Mad King's order. But the fuses strung recently, under guise of maintenance. Gold cloaks escorted barrels through the tunnels, gold cloaks and crimson-laced mantles. Names, Rhaegar pressed. Manticore Company. Hired swords wearing Lannister colors. No lion sigil, but the red. Hallie's shoulders quaked. Payment delivered through a broker in Bitterbridge. He spoke Western drawl. Rhaegar rose, blood pounding behind his temples. Tywin's slow siege of grain lines, his march along the river, pieces now fit too snugly. A lion starves its prey. He strode from the cell, cloak snapping behind. At dawn he summoned his war council, Connington, Ned, Barristan, Oberyn, and, to their surprise, Stannis. A map of the Riverlands spread under his fist. Tywin seeks to strangle us, he began, voice low. We will not yield bread nor justice to such knife. Stannis' lip curled. Justice. He glanced at the hammer resting nearby. You would move against the Lannisters, how? You lack host enough to breach their lines. We need not breach, Rhaegar replied. We cut behind. His finger traced smaller roads threading out of Harrenhal, skirting bog and forest toward the Gold Road. Swift riders through marshlands, reaching their supply wagons. Burn what they hoarded. Connington shook his head. Risky. Our outriders are few. Oberyn leaned forward, eyes glinting. Give the mission to Dorne's light horse and the Wolf's Mountain men. We thrive where conventional armies falter. Ned nodded slowly. Glover and Mormont each brought 100 rangers. They can ghost through Fen. Stannis slammed fist to the table. You plan raids while justice rots. Yet Lannister gold killed small folk. Very well. I will lend galleys to cut their retreat at Maidenpool. But when lion's blood spills, crowns cannot hide behind roses. He met Rhaegar's gaze, challenge unmistakable. Will you see Tywin tried? If proof stands, Rhaegar said, the old lion will answer. That night, Lyanna found him standing on Harrenhal's parapet overlooking the lake, wind stirring ragged banners. She sensed rage burning cold inside him, visible in the way his shoulders hunched, as though to shield flame from gusts. You fear what you must do, she said. He did not deny it. War again so soon. And over what? Food, pride. Yet if I bend, Tywin will own every breath the city takes. She slipped her hand into his. Winterfell's words are sometimes prayer as well as warning. Winter is coming. We prepare so others might weather it. If Tywin turns grain into gold and gold into power, he hoards life itself. That cannot stand. He closed eyes, breathing her scent. Pine, smoke, milk. I swore to build. Sometimes builders topple rotten beams before raising new halls. At sunrise, Dornish riders under Lord Dane slipped from camp, banners hidden, faces wrapped. Northern rangers moved with them, ghosts in mist. Within hours they vanished into marshland, leaving only ripples in reeds. Council sessions dragged each day. Petitions from lesser lords, grievances over borders redrawn by war, whispered threats. Tyrell knights sparred in ruined courtyards, their laughter brittle. Lannister envoys watched from towers, counting hoofbeats. The air tasted of storm. On the 5th night, horns blared from Eastern Watch. Fires lit along Stannis ramparts. Scouts tumbled into camp. The Lannister grain column outside Bitterbridge had burned, wagons blazing red against Dark River. Northern arrows struck from timberline, Dornish spears cut oxen loose. Supplies sunk into the mud, or floated aflame downstream. Rhaegar gathered his council. Tywin would move now, angered. Sure enough, ravens arrived at dawn. Lord Lannister accusing the crown of piracy against grain meant for refugees, demanding reparations, threatening to cut marches of the Trident from royal protection. Mace Tyrell thundered outrage that his provisioning stood imperiled. He offered hosts to escort remaining caravans, but for a price fat as his paunch. In open session, lords argued until voices rasped. Some decried the crown's recklessness, others cheered lions brought low. Through it all, Rhaegar sat, eyes dark with resolve. When at last silence fell, he announced, I will ride to Bitterbridge. I will speak with Lord Tywin beneath Parley Banner. I will bring 100 knights, no more. If he seeks war, let him begin it before every lord at this council knows whose hunger truly guides his hand. Mentor 1. Gasps, Doit E. Ned protested. Barristan begged leave to ride instead. Rhaegar refused. The crown must face its accuser. And the crown is me. 3 days later, the Parley Pavilion stood beside the Mander, white silk under gray sky. Rhaegar rode through ranks of gleaming lion shields. Fewer than rumor bragged, but enough to chill. Tywin awaited him, robed in crimson, his hard face unreadable. Words between them rolled like distant thunder. Accusations, denials, offers wrapped in iron. Rhaegar demanded Tywin account for wildfire smuggled. Tywin demanded proof and reparations for lost grain. They circled, two predators over single kill. At last Tywin's patience cracked. He drew from his sleeve a slip of parchment. A marriage pact with Highgarden. Signed and sealed, he announced. Margaery Tyrell shall wed my son Jaime. With that alliance the Reach stands with the Rock. Consider carefully whether you wish those fields close to your starving capital. Rhaegar's heart hammered. Roses and lions entwined, bread and gold chained together. If Tywin succeeded, his blockade could starve King's Landing without laying siege. But a colder fire flared behind the prince's ribs. He saw green flame reflected in the lion's eyes, felt ashes clog children's mouths. He stepped forward until only a sword's length separated them. "Break this realm and inherit ruin," he said softly. "Or aid it and share in its prosperity. Choose." Tywin's gaze flicked to the parchment, to Rhaegar's unwavering eyes, and back. A heartbeat stretched thin. Then he smiled. "A small, cold thing. Prosperity favors the patient dragon. I will think on your words." Damn. The meeting ended in uneasy truce. Rhaegar returned to Harrenhal, cloak snapping in rising wind. Behind him, Tywin watched until the prince passed beyond spear reach, then crushed the marriage pact in one mailed fist. Paper crumbled, but not his designs. That night, a storm broke over the lake, thunder shaking shattered towers. Lightning bled silver across Lyanna's face as she stood at the window, watching tents whip and ropes snap. In the courtyard below, soldiers scrambled to secure horse lines. She felt the air shiver, sensed, rather than saw, the shape of coming doom. The babe stirred, whimpering. She whispered comfort, but her heart beat like war drums. In a distant wing, Oberyn Martell whispered to Elia of plans yet unspoken, of poisoned spears and debts long owed. She held his hand, torn between dread and a spark of fierce, guilty hope. Ned stood upon the battlements, rain slicing across his brow. He watched the dark line of Stannis' camp, lightning revealing stark silhouettes of stag banners stiff in gale. The wolf in his blood tasted coming carnage and mourned it already. In the Godswood, Rhaegar knelt beneath a fledgling weirwood, rain matting silver hair to his face. He pressed palm to damp earth and whispered a song without words, notes trembling beyond hearing, echoing off storm clouds. Lightning split the sky, and for a moment, he glimpsed the path before him. A narrow bridge of glass above churning void. On one side, peace forged through fragile alliances. On the other, fire and steel engraves. The bridge swayed, and behind him, he felt small warm weight of his son's future, balance precarious as candle flame. Thunder rolled. He rose, rain coursing down his cheeks, like tears he would not shed. Tomorrow the council would summon judgment upon Wildfire's conspirators. Tomorrow he would stand before gathered lords to name Tywin Lannister architect of murder. Whether realm followed justice or plunged again into war, he could not see. But he felt sword-hilt steel under his palm, and Lyanna's steady heartbeat somewhere beyond stone walls. He turned toward the keep, cloak clinging wet to his shoulders, mouth shaping words lost to wind. Yet the storm carried them skyward, scattering them like sparks. Let this be the last fire. Let this be the dawn. Outside, rain drowned the embers of campfires, but flames of ambition, guilt, and prophecy burned on, unseen, unquenchable. The game would go on until one fire alone remained to light the realm, or consume it. The storm battered Harrenhal well into first light. Sheets of rain clashing against scorched stone like an army of ghosts trying to tear the ruin down. Drains clogged by decades of moss overflowed, turning courtyards into gray-lipped ponds where the standards of a dozen houses sagged, sodden, and disconsolate. Lightning cracked the sky wide open again and again, illuminating the immense banqueting hall in shuddering glimpses. The tapestried ghosts of Harren the Black's long-dead lineage seemed to stir whenever the world flashed stark white. Inside, braziers hissed as rain spattered through holes in the roof, and smoke clung in ragged scarves above benches, where the lesser lords tried to keep their parchments dry with elbows and curses. Rhaegar had slept, perhaps an hour, but he entered the hall on silent feet, silver hair loose down the back of a dark riding jerkin. The city of King's Landing might still smell of ash, yet he brought something colder with him today. A winter clarity that made even the petty quarrelers drop their voices. Ned Stark and Barristan Selmy followed, swords belted but unclasped, while Varys hovered at the prince's flank like a candle's wavering shadow. The dais had been cleared of shattered throne debris, replaced by a plain oaken table. On it sat 3 leather folios. Connington's deposition on the wildfire trades, various compilations of witness testimony, and the half-burned shipping manifests looted from Tywin's wagons before they were torched. Each folio was sealed with the wax of a different realm. The dragon, the sun and spear, the dire wolf, lest anyone accuse a single hand of forging the story whole. Rhaegar looked at those seals as though deciding which of 3 poisons might be less fatal to swallow. The first to arrive after him was Tywin Lannister. He strode in beneath a crimson cloak, embroidered with a lion rampant, so meticulously stitched that the threads caught what pitiful torchlight remained from overnight. Rainwater beaded on the pauldrons of his plate, shining like genteel blood. He paused just inside the threshold, taking the temperature of the room. The Tyrell envoys whispering across the aisle, the Arryn men perched stiff as falcons on the gallery. The Frey contingent clustered like wary mice near the hearth. Balon Greyjoy lounged with an almost insolent sprawl on a bench near the center, seawater still dripping from his salt-stained leathers. Tywin noted every face without overt glance, then fixed his eyes on Rhaegar's. The old lion's composure was battlefield calm, yet something flared in his gaze. Annoyance, perhaps, that a mortal storm had dared to soak his cloak. Mace Tyrell arrived next, huffing under the weight of a coat lined with marten fur, despite the warm season. He hustled his daughter ahead of him, as though the sight of Margaery's rose-petaled cheeks might soften whatever stone awaited. A thin band of Old Town smiths stood ready behind the Tyrells, each holding a carved chest of bread loaves wrapped in linen, as a visual reminder that the Reach still possessed bounty. The smell drifted on the damp air, impossible to ignore. More than one soldier's stomach growled like a dog sniffing a bone it knew it would never taste. Stannis Baratheon arrived late, perhaps by design. He wore no crown, only a plain breastplate, etched with nothing but the faint memory of Robert's crowned stag. Lightning glinted off it each time a window gaped open in the wind, but Stannis himself seemed unmoved by either thunder or ceremony. He carried Robert's warhammer again, cradling the weapon almost gently in the crook of an arm cured by steel and discipline. Behind him shuffled Eddard Storm, eyes dark-rimmed from a night spent pacing palisade walls in the rain. When all seats were filled, torches were doused, so the room's only light came from 3 iron candelabra placed along the table. Shadows pooled in corners where Lords Tarth, Dustin, and Piper sat whispering. The hush felt like the moment when a harp string quivers after being plucked, the sound still resonating inside wooden ribs. That quiver ended when Rhaegar touched the first folio, broke the wax of House Targaryen, and unrolled the parchment. "Wisdom Haleni of the Alchemist's Guild stands under guard in the tower above," he said, voice low yet steady. He has sworn before Septon and Hearttree alike that he oversaw the placement of wildfire stores beneath the districts of Fleabottom, Cobbler Square, and the Hill of Rhaenys, at the instruction of armed men, wearing half livery of Lannister red. Murmurs frothed up, cut quickly by Barristan's mailed knuckles thumping the table once. Rhaegar continued. "Payment for the work was delivered by a merchant factor of Bitterbridge, whose receipts we possess." He lifted a smaller sheet, ink blurred at the edges, but still legible. Tyrell gold marks, stamped with the rose of Highgarden, glimmered faintly beside a single lion's head, an emblem of the Lannister Mint. 20 wagon loads of grain, however, purchased by Highgarden and destined for the capital, were found in the same columns that spirited wildfire out of the city. Mace Tyrell bristled. "Our grain was seized under threat, not given in conspiracy," he objected, cheeks flushing red. "Those wagons bore the sigil of a stag, not a lion." Rhaegar nodded. "Indeed. Witnesses saw them repainted en route, first with a makeshift stag, then a blank shield, as if the convoy's masters could not decide which deception best served." He laid down the second folio, its wax direwolf seal glistening. "Rangers of the North, accompanied by Dornish outriders, captured these wagons and rescued the hostlers forced to drive them. He paused, blue-violet eyes sweeping the benches. We have their testimony. Tywin's voice carried like a scalpel scrape. You have the word of terrified small folk, coached by your own envoys. He made no move to stand, but the weight of his regard pinned many lords in place. And you present ledgers who could have been drawn by any scribe. Do you declare war on House Lannister with this parchment? I declare war on whoever murdered my people, Rhaegar said. No louder, but every syllable cut the smoky air. If that be Lannister gold and Tyrell grain allied in secret, so be it. If it be my own kin or Kingsguard, so be it. He inclined head towards Stannis. If it be Baratheon vengeance, so be it. But justice must stand in daylight now. Then chow. Stannis' reply was a short nod. Begin daylight then. I will listen. His eyes never left Tywin's face. Tywin folded arms. Justice cannot grow from soil watered with lies. Produce the alchemist. Summon him before us. Let this hall judge truth before rumor festers into needless bloodshed. No sooner had he spoken than the creak of iron hinges announced Varys, returning with 2 gold cloaks escorting Wisdom Hallani. The man's once rich burgundy robe clung, soaked from the storm. His hands trembled in cuffs. He blinked owlishly at the gathered nobility, as though still uncertain whether he spoke to lords or to the headsman's block. Rhaegar nodded once. Tell them what you told me. Hallyne swallowed. I was bid to oversee repositioning of the old caches, to ensure they burned clean if ever ignited. We built new clay pots, stronger, and wove spiderweb fuses with care. His voice cracked. The men guarding the work bore half-cloaks dyed Lannister red, but they wore no sigils. They said the gold was from Lord Tywin's own vaults. For the good of the realm should rebels breach King's Landing. They paid in these. He gestured. A squire stepped forward, presenting a small coffer. Inside lay golden coins stamped, not with the crowned stag of royal currency, but the lion's head ringed by a chain of 7 links, Lannister mining assay marks. Tywin did not flinch. He held out a hand. The nearest guard delivered a coin. He inspected it, turned it beneath candlelight, then flicked it back into the box. Thousands of such coins circulate. Anyone could melt gold. Strike a new stamp. Sow discord. Mensua. Yet none but Casterly rock mine gold in such purity. Oberyn Martell interjected with a viper's smile. And this chain of 7 is the mark pledged by your own essay master. I have traded in Dornish wine enough to know. Tywin's lip curled by a hair. The Martells have trafficked poison and gossip across half the free cities. I marvel that you suddenly champion careful accounting. Oberyn's chair screeched softly as he leaned in. Poison favors delicate tongues. Yours, however, wields wildfire. Da. A rumble of reaction rolled around the benches. Tyrell men whispered among themselves, judging wind-like shifts. The Ironborn laughed aloud, and Balon Greyjoy slapped a hand to knee. Dragon's roast, lion's torch. This is why krakens fear only deep water. All your castles burn so bright. Stannis slammed the warhammer down. Splinters exploding from aged oak. Enough. His voice rang like struck anvil, and silence crashed again. Quit this bickering before we drown in rain or rhetoric. There is proof the Mad King's caches were moved. Proof they burned the city. There is coin that points to the lion. Does the lion deny funding the movement of wildfire? Then? Tywin's eyes flicked lightning quick from Stannis to Rhaegar. I deny nothing that has been proved, he said. Yet, you have only a cowering pyromancer who'd say the moon is made of blood to save his skin. Produce ledgers from my stewards, or names of the men you claim bore my colors. Hallyne opened his mouth, perhaps to supply such names. But a crossbow quarrel sprouted from his throat before any sound emerged. For one impossible moment, he stared stunned at the bolt's mahogany shaft, eyes wide and wet. Then he collapsed. Flailing cuffs clattering as he struck stone. Screams erupted, benches crashed, swords rasped free. Rhaegar spun, hand on dagger, scanning rafters for the assassin. High above, a rotted beam swung. Loosened by the storm, shedding splinters. No figure there. Yet 2 Tyrell knights had leapt immediately aside from their table. Their chairs toppled, revealing a gap where the quarrel had likely flown. In the chaos, Marguerite Tyrell was hustled behind her father's great back like a sapling shoved behind a portly wall. Barristan vaulted over the table, sliding to Hallin's fallen body. But one glance was enough. The bolt had crushed trachea and spine alike. Even pyromancers cannot conjure life from that ruin. Tywin's voice pierced the din. Assassination in the prince's own court, on the very lips of truth. Does that not trouble you, my lords? Stannis lifted the hammer half an inch, eyes murderously calm. It troubles me that a witness died at the very moment his testimony threatened House Lannister. Tywin spread gloved hands. Perhaps the Martell blades reach farther than we credit. Oberyn barked a single laugh. A Dornishman uses blades he can savor, not cowardly quarrels from dark corners. Rhaegar's gaze swept the upper gallery. Rain hammered gaps in roof tiles, but no crossbowman lingered. He felt the trap close. The one Tywin had surely not arranged in this precise form, but would exploit nonetheless. Without Hallin alive, mere paper and hearsay remained. Ned Stark's voice, quiet but firm, rose from behind Rhaegar. I saw the survivor wagoneers. They named red-liveried men with western accents, lion pendants hidden beneath half-cloaks. They did not invent that detail, nor did they know what white it carried. He stepped beside the fallen pyromancer, knelt, and placed 2 fingers over Hallin's dulling eyes. Truth remains truth, even if its tongue is silenced. Tywin's lips twitched. Anger or satisfaction, none could tell. A sentimental notion, he said. But sentiment does not rule kingdoms. Rhaegar felt a throbbing behind his temples. The hall had devolved into snarls and snapped rebuttals. The banners of Tyrell and Lannister seemed to bristle like living beasts. Stannis' supporters stood stone-tight, hands on sword grips. Some minor lords slipped toward exits, unwilling to be shut in a tinderbox again. Rain pummeled the roof louder, as if the heavens tried to drown impending violence. He raised one hand. Somehow his voice carried even through the storm's crescendo. We end this today with verdict or with blades, he announced. The realm cannot suffer drawn knives hidden by parchment. He pointed to Tywin. Will you submit to trial by council? Will you surrender your steward and quartermaster for questioning under the faith's supervision? Tywin's jaw worked once. Then he inclined his head. A motion barely more than a blink. I will submit my steward, if the Reach submits theirs. Let the High Septon test all coins and contracts. Mace Tyrell's flushed face ballooned redder, but he could hardly refuse. Very well, he blurted. The Reach hides nothing. He snapped fingers. A lean man in green livery bowed reluctantly. No steward enjoys sudden summons. Rhaegar exhaled, tension easing but not broken. It is done, he said. The High Septon will hold inquiry at sunrise tomorrow. Until then, no retinues leave Harrenhal. He shot a glance at Varys, who gave a subtle nod. Ravens would fly before nightfall, summoning faith inspection teams and Septon scribes. The hall emptied slowly. Lords filed out beneath dripping archways, holding cloaks over heads. Rhaegar lingered, gaze fixed on the bolt protruding from Hallin's corpse. Barristan touched his shoulder. We must learn who loosed it. Assassins come cheap to any pocket. Now, Rhaegar answered without looking away. Cheap, yes, but silent. Crossbows are stolen thunder. The killer wished all to hear the accusation die. He finally turned. Search the Tyrell camp for missing quarrels. Search the Lannisters. Search Stannis. Leave no tent unturned. Septimaris arrived to claim Hallin's body. As they lifted him, a small clay bottle slipped from his sleeve, clinking on stone. Rhaegar stooped and retrieved it. Cork still sealed with wax. The amber glass held viscous green fluid, wildfire, though in tiny measure. Tiny, yet enough to ignite cloth or parchment. He weighed it in his palm. Short of breath, he slipped the bottle into cloak pocket and departed. The rain eased by afternoon. Puddles across manor yards mirrored ragged clouds scudding west, leaving sharper air behind. Lyanna found Rhaegar in the disused godswood, staring at the sapling weirwood as if it might answer riddles. She stepped on moss silently. When he noticed her, he gave a weary smile. "Harrenhal drinks blood and storm water," he said. "Every time we try to drain one, the other overflows." She touched the sapling's white bark, streaked with rain. "Roots need water to grow, even the red sap of your Targaryen past and the snowmelt of mine." She studied him. "Tell me what burdens you now." He handed her the wildfire vial. Proof in one form, but weapon in another. If it were to vanish tonight, who would believe the tale tomorrow? She rolled the bottle between fingers. "Your hands shake. Not fear, but fatigue. Rest, or you will fracture. A king does no good in splinters." Then, he opened arms, and she stepped into them, head against his chest. They stood thus until wind rustled leaves overhead. Finally he kissed her temple and whispered, "I must keep walking the bridge." She tipped chin. "Bridges collapse if weight is uneven. Let some of us walk ahead." She pressed the vial back to his hand. "Give this to Ned. Have him entrust it to his maester. Wolves guard what dragons might burn by accident." He considered, then nodded. Together, they left the godswood, unaware that in the deserted cloister behind them, a small shape detached from ivy shadows, listening, silent, gone. Night returned calmer, but tension soaked the air like resin waiting for spark. Braziers dotted the camp roads, lighting muddy rivulets where soldiers ferried messages. Rumor ran quicker. That Hallanine had confessed Tyrell treachery only, that Stannis would challenge Tywin to single combat, that Rhaegar meant to abdicate for his son and name Ned Stark regent. Each tale more fevered than the last. By moonrise, banners no longer drooped wet. They shivered like ragged teeth chattering. In the Lannister pavilion, Tywin sat alone, save for a single lantern and the Sivas board before him. This time, black dragon pieces faced crimson lions set upon tiles carved into a ring of 7 pointed stars. He moved the lion vizier 2 squares south, removed a dragon spear. But as he lifted his hand, another moved across the board. A polished piece wrought as a white wolf. It darted sideways, toppling a lion knight. Tywin's gaze tracked the piece to find Jaime standing opposite, golden hair damp from recent patrol. He wore no cloak, only boiled leather, rain-darkened. "Father," he said, voice low. "Barristan's men comb our stores. They count quarrels." Tywin set the vizier atop the board rim. "Quarrels are cheap. Our enemies misunderstand where real power lies." Jaime's eyes flicked to the wolf piece. "Do they? A pyromancer with your coin in his sleeve lies dead. Even you cannot spin that into roses and sunshine." Tywin folded hands. "I need no sunshine. Only shadow long enough to move armies." He lifted the white wolf and set it back among its fellows. "Tell me, are you prepared to do what the realm requires?" Jaime did not answer at once. Rain pattered softer now, more drizzle than downpour. He stared at the board, recalling the sticky warmth of Aerys' blood on his blade, the hiss of dragonfire in hidden vaults, the sight of Lyanna's infant cradled by a half-burned nurse in King's Landing chaos. Innocents drowning in decisions men like Tywin called necessary. His throat worked. "You taught me to be lion-hearted," he said eventually. "But sometimes hearts bleed." Tywin's stare hardened into amber glass. "Better to bleed for victory than for sentiment." He gestured dismissively. "Go rest. Tomorrow, we show the realm who leads it." Jaime left, cloak flaring. In its wake, the lantern flame trembled. Tywin resumed his solitary game, yet every move now felt heavier than gold. Across camp, Stannis knelt before the simple wooden altar he'd ordered built in his tent. A flat plank with no carved 7, no painted table, only fire burning in a clay bowl, tongues licking night air. He held Robert's hammer upright, both hands gripping the haft so tightly knuckles whitened. The fire's glow danced on the iron stag. "For justice," he murmured, eyes unblinking. "For law." Eddard Storm hovered at the entrance, trying not to disturb. When Stannis finally rose, the youth stepped forward. "Word is the High Septon will test coin and witness." He hesitated. Some say even coin can lie. Stannis snorted. Metal lies less often than men. But truth will surface. It always does, like swollen corpse rising from river mud. Will it matter? Eddard asked quietly. If Tywin walks free? Stannis's jaw clenched. If lions claw free of justice, storms tear the pride apart. He hefted the hammer. And I am a storm. Before dawn's gray smear touched the clouds, a rider galloped into camp. Cloak plastered to back. He bore the black trout of Tully on a rain-warped pennon. Guards led him to Ned Stark, who prepared for the morning's inquiry. The messenger delivered a sealed letter. Ned's brow nodded as he broke it, then went pale beneath unshaven cheeks. He strode straight to Rhaegar's quarters. Rhaegar met him grim-eyed. Ned handed over the parchment. The twins have closed their gates, Ned said. Lord Walder Frey claims illness and cannot ride to council. But his letter warns, iron-born ships raid the western coast. Lannisport aflame. Balance Krakens sailed off days before their lord did. He paused. The timing fits too neatly. Tywin's grain convoy, wildfire testimony, now raids on his own lands. A ruse? Rhaegar scanned the crab script. Walder's tone half gloating, half begging to know which side to court. Balon would burn Lannisport for plunder alone, Rhaegar murmured. Yet coincidence piles upon coincidence. Lions could have hired Krakens, Ned suggested. A burnt harbor buys sympathy. Or Krakens could seize chance, smelling blood in the water, Rhaegar countered. They paced. Footsteps echoed off stone like ticking hearts. Regardless, Ned said, it changes today's inquiry. Tywin will demand his armies return west. The council may grant leave. Rhaegar exhaled, heavy. If we let him go, proof trails into Westerland's mists. If we keep him, we risk open rebellion while Krakens feast. He closed eyes, rubbed temple. Time, Ned. Prophecies speak of dragons' dawns but never of trade routes or raiding ships. Thou. Ned clasped Rhaegar's shoulder. Prophecy guides hearts. Council guards lives. We weigh both. The bell tolled first hour. Lords gathered at the ruins chapel, repurposed as court. Its cracked dome let shafts of pale light fall upon a plain stone dais where the High Septon already prayed. 2 acolytes kneeling beside casks of holy oil and steaming water. Beside him stood Maester Archibald from the Citadel, scales of his chain glittering. The steward of Casterly Rock, an icicle-thin man named Rhaegar, stood trembling under guard. Opposite him the Reach steward, corpulent Sir Uther Peake, dabbed sweat with handkerchief. Mace Tyrell whispered furiously to his steward. Remember, we fed those people. Tywin, by contrast, merely watched Rhaegar with a gaze that could slice coin thinner than parchment. The Septon blessed the gathering. Rhaegar opened proceedings, reciting charges. That wildfire had been transported. That grain convoy served double purpose. That coin from one hand directed both. The maester produced a set of scales, weighed gold from the Tyrell coffers against a sample from the captured chest. The first 2 coins balanced. The third, bearing lion mark, tipped lighter by a hair. Impurity? Or cunning? Archibald frowned. Adjusted weights. Tried again. Same sliver of difference. He recorded results, ink splotching quill. Next, they questioned Rhaegar. His voice was reeds in wind. A factor named Rolf was to pay the guildmaster at Bitterbridge. He carried sealed orders bearing the Lion of Casterly Rock and the 7-link chain. He produced the sealed orders. Still intact. Tywin's brow creased. Clearly he had not expected that document to survive. Rhaegar accepted it. Broke wax. The script was simple. Deliver payment as agreed. Discretion paramount. LK6. No full signature. Only cipher. Tywin shrugged. Any man could write those letters. Uther Peake groaned under interrogation, claiming bandits forced his wagons to alter routes. Connington produced maps showing those exact wagons ventured days off course, into woods rife with sellsword camps. Peake stuttered. We feared river floods. Laughter rippled cruelly around the chapel. Hours bled. Midday sun filtered through broken dome. turning dust motes into gold-flecked flurries. Lord Tyrell demanded recess, citing hunger. Rhaegar refused, saying hunger should shorten tongues. Tywin remained impassive, though his steward's head drooped lower each question. Finally, the High Septon conferred with Maester Archibald. They whispered, acolytes shielding them. Then the High Septon cleared throat, trembling. "We have heard enough to weigh guilt," he said. "Yet holy law demands more than suspicion. No living witness stands who saw Lord Tywin seal affixed." He bowed to Rhaegar. "We require purgation by trial of 7, or by single combat." A roar of response. Lord stood, shouting wagers. Squires scrambled. Trial by combat, relic of first men oaths, still allowed by faith. Tywin rose, cloak swirling. "I claim single combat," he declared. "Let the gods judge." Mace Tyrell gaped, momentarily thrown. Stannis folded arms, eyes bright. Balon Greyjoy grinned with wolfish amusement. Rhaegar's chest tightened. Tywin at 60 looked carved of granite. But he would not fight himself. He would name a champion. And the finest sword in Westeros, barring Dane and Barristan, was Jaime. Sure enough, Tywin's gaze flicked to his son on the benches. Jaime stood slowly, golden hair catching light. Faces pivoted. Jaime's throat bobbed once. His green eyes met Rhaegar's, then Barristan's, then Lyanna's across the aisle, her expression unreadable save for a tiny shake of her head. Jaime swallowed. "I decline, father," he said, voice clear but quiet. Shock rippled. Tywin's eyes widened by a hair. First time some had ever seen surprise crack that mask. Jaime stepped forward. "I serve in the Kingsguard still. I cannot raise sword for a single lord above the realm." Benendau. Silence stabbed deeper than metal. Tywin's face hardened. "So be it. Sir Gregor Clegane will champion House Lannister." An audible gasp answered. The mountain that rides, tall as a small tower, hate-filled. He pushed forward from Lannister benches now, helmet tucked under one arm, greatsword strapped across back. Locals murmured of charred villages behind his path. The High Septon looked to Rhaegar. "Who stands for the crown's cause?" Stannis' hammer thudded earth. "Storm stands. I will wield Robert's justice." Nendamau. Crown and faith accepted. Combat at next sunrise, in the old tourney yard where Harrenhal's legends were birthed and broken. Squires bolted to sharpen blades. Smiths reheated forges. Lords hedged bets behind hullabaloo. Varys vanished. That evening, Rhaegar sought Jaime at the base of Kingsguard encampment. Rain had ceased. Lamps glowed. Jaime sat sharpening sword with whetstone, though its edge already gleamed. He did not stand when Rhaegar approached. "You denied your father," Rhaegar said softly. "I did," Jaime answered, "because I have sworn enough vows to choke a Septon. But tonight, I kept the right one." He scraped stone, metal singing. "If Stannis falls, the crown's case dies. Tywin walks free, perhaps to raise the west and carve the realm. And if the mountain falls..." Jaime's hand stilled. "My father will not forgive, but perhaps fewer children will burn." He met Rhaegar's gaze. Something like plea behind green. "Swear to me that if Stannis wins, you press justice to its end." Rhaegar nodded once. "If proof stands," Tywin answers. Jaime returned to sharpening. Rhaegar left him with the night. In Lyanna's tent, she cradled the child while Ilya sat opposite, braiding Rhaenys' hair by candle glow. The faint sound of distant anvil echoed. Armorers buckling greaves for dawn. Lyanna asked, "Do you fear tomorrow?" Ilya tied ribbon. Smiled wan. "Fear has been constant friend. I have learned to breathe with it." She stroked her daughter's cheek. "If the gods spare us more war, perhaps our children will learn its name only in stories." Lyanna shifted babe to shoulder. "There will be more war, but maybe fewer fires." "Them no." Outside, Ned Stark stood with Barristan Selmy at the Godswood edge, both watching stars peek through cloud fractures. "Does Stannis stand chance?" Ned asked. Barristan rubbed beard. "Steel decides, but the gods tip scale. He has will and Robert's hammer. Sometimes that is enough." Ned sighed. "Sometimes not." Dawn bloomed pink over the lake, dew steaming from churned field. The makeshift arena ringed by weather-brown wagons filled with lords and soldiers alike. They perched on railings, breath fogging. The mountain entered first, armor blackened from old hearths, greatsword broader than some men's torsos. His helm snarled like demon with flanged horns. He paced, mud sucking at greaves. Stannis approached from opposite end. He wore plate, chased with copper. Simple, unadorned, yet perfectly fitted. Robert's hammer rested on shoulder. Sunlight caught the stag on its iron head. Eddard Storm carried a buckler plate, but remained outside circle. High Septon intoned rites, sprinkling holy oil in quick arcs, lest ground drink blood unblessed. Rhaegar, seated with council, gripped chair arms. Tywin watched, nostrils flaring faintly. Jaime sat 2 rows back, helmet in lap. Gaze locked on Clegane. Trumpets blared. Combat began. The mountain charged, sword cleaving downward like falling gate. Stannis slid aside, hammer whipping to catch blades flat, redirecting energy with surprising grace. Mud sprayed. Clegane roared, swinging in brutal side arc. Stannis ducked, hammer cracked to knee guard, denting it. The mountain's grunt thundered like boulder shifting. They parted. Crowd held breath. Clegane limped, subtle. Stannis circled, breathing measured, eyes hard as flint. Second clash. Sword thrust furious, hammer parried, sparks. Clegane's gauntlet punched Stannis' pauldron. Metal howled. Stannis staggered, but foot planted. Hammer slammed upward into Clegane's ribplate. Crunch of fracturing mail. Clegane bellowed, swung elbow at Stannis' head, glancing but jarring. Blood spattered Clegane's lip from inside helm. He yanked it free, tossing aside to breathe easier. Scarred face twisted rage. He bowled forward, shoulders slamming Stannis full, sending him skidding through sludge. Stannis rolled, came up kneeling, barely raising hammer in time to ward slashing sword. Edge bit shaft, splitting oak haft but not severing fully. Stannis surged, used broken length as lever to trap blade, then rose, twisting. Clegane lost grip. Sword slid away, vanished in mud. Gasps, Dotto. The mountain drew dagger like carving knife, and lunged. Stannis let go hammer stub, seized Clegane's wounded knee and heaved. Giant toppled sideways, earth shook. Stannis snatched his brother's weapon two-handed, swung downward with roar that emptied lungs. The hammer's iron head crushed Clegane's helmless skull with wet crack. Silence. Then seabirds screamed overhead. Stannis staggered back, panting. Mud and blood-coated plate. High Septon raised hands. The gods have judged. Justice is served. Cheers erupted among Stormlanders and many smallfolk watchers. Murmurs and shocked stillness among Lannisters. Tywin stood, face like cut marble. He turned, cloak swirling, strode from stands. Guards hurried. Rhaegar rose. "Lord Tywin," he called. Voice carried across hushed throng. "Remain. The trial proceeds." Tywin halted but did not turn. Rain threatened again, clouds massing. Jaime rose, hand to sword. Tywin's shoulders squared. Slowly he faced the dais. "The gods judged only my champion," he said. "Not House Lannister." Rhaegar met his gaze. "The faith will now examine your merchants and ledgers. Your armies will stand down until verdict." "The west burns," Tywin replied. "Ironborn sack my harbor even now. I ride to defend my people. You may dispatch your son to command in your stead," Rhaegar allowed. "You remain." Tywin's jaw clenched. Jaime stepped forward. "Father, let me go," he offered. But Tywin shook head. The rock does not yield stewardship to sons while enemies circle. He looked back to Rhaegar. If you can find me, you abandon thousands of Westerlords to Krakens. My duty forbids. Rhaegar descended dais. Guards tensed. Your duty, he said softly, has cost thousands already. He drew breath. Barristan, escort Lord Tywin to quarters under guard until inquiry ends. Jaime Lannister will command West Relief. Jaime paled but nodded. Tywin's eyes flared fury, then settled to cold embers. He surrendered sword hilt first to Barristan, though lingered half-beat longer than courtesy. Do not mistake this cage for victory, he murmured. Barristan led him away, lion cloak dragging in mud. Storm broke overhead, rain hammering field in sudden torrent. Stannis knelt beside Clegane's corpse, washing blood from hammer in falling sheets. His eyes lifted skyward as though waiting for more verdicts. That afternoon, ravens left Harrenhal bearing sealed writs. Commands for the Golden Tooth to muster defense against Ironborn. Summons for the Lords Declarant of the Vale. Entreaties to Prince Doran to send record-keepers to witness inquiry. Grain caravans under Tyrell banners pulled into inner yard unchallenged, offloading sacks for camp kitchens. Lyanna watched from battlement, where moss slicked stone into treacherous green. She felt rain-soaked cloak, dripping to infant pressed against her. Look, she whispered, pointing to the field where healers carried Stannis into pavilion. That is what winter winds sound like when they find a way through armor. Elia stepped beside her. And yet, even winter yields to spring eventually. She tucked shawl closer about shoulders. Perhaps this is first thaw. Lyanna's eyes followed the guards escorting Tywin to tower. Thunder groaned. Or perhaps the ice cracks before it melts. Night deepened. In a high cell, Tywin sat at rough-hewn table. Quill scratching parchment by candle stub. 2 letters. One to Cersei in Casterly Rock instructing immediate fortifications. The other to the commanders of the Golden Company in Tyrosh, promising chests of gold thrice what any king would pay, for service soon to be named. He sanded the ink, folded, sealed with drippings. The wax bore no lion but blank circle, to be stamped later. He extinguished candle, eyes reflecting lightning flicker through barred slit. Below, Jaime oversaw quartermasters preparing for march west.I. He paused at stable door, staring into dark stall where his warhorse chewed straw. The sword at his belt weighed heavier than ever. He had kept vows today, yet sundered blood. He closed eyes, remembering father's disappointment. When he opened them, a resolve hardened. He would ride to defend Lannisport, but also to ensure the West did not sharpen daggers in secret while Tywin schemed. For once, perhaps, a lion would guard more than its own pride. In Rhaegar's quarters, council sat around map, lit by lamplight. Connington reported scouts shadowing Ironborn longships along Sunset Sea. Dornish outriders prepared to harry flanks if Lannister levies faltered. Oberyn volunteered to escort Jaime, claiming curiosity about the West's vineyards. Varys arched brow at that. Rhaegar listened, but mind drifted to prophecy. Song of ice and fire. He studied candles. One flame tall, another flickering, a third nearly spent. Perhaps they were 3 heads of dragon. His children, his queens, his choices. He closed eyes briefly. Saw again crossbow bolt, green fire. A hammer falling. Prophecy seldom spoke of mud or grain or tired horses, yet here lay the realm. Tomorrow, the High Septon would sift ledgers. But even guilty coin could not mend charred homes or drowned sailors. He murmured, after inquiry, we return to King's Landing. Harrenhal can host ghosts, not governments. No one objected. A quiet settled. Rain ceased. Through cracked window, faint stars emerged, tentative. Barristan stood, cleared throat. Your Grace. Wisdom Halanine's body, what rights? Crenate, Rhaegar answered. Wildfire twisted against him. Let fire cleanse. He rubbed temples. Scatter ashes on Blackwater where so many died. They dispersed. Rhaegar remained, head bowed. Lyanna slipped inside, set sleeping babe in cradle. She wrapped arms around him from behind, cheek against his shoulder blades. The bridge held today, she whispered. For now, he murmured. She squeezed tighter. Then hold me too. He turned, pressing forehead to hers, inhaling scent of rain and smoke and milk. In that small silence, outside storms receded, banners drooped, soldiers slept, and wolves and dragons together dreamed of worlds not yet burned. Yet far beyond river and ruin, kraken sails flecked moonlit waves. Iron bells clanged in Volantine taverns, where sellswords listened to talk of Lannister gold. And at a lonely crossroads, two cloaked riders whispered of coronets hammered for yet uncrowned children. The song still played, each note reverberating across realms. Dawn waited with bated breath, poised to choose whether it broke gentle pink or blood red. For bridges too can burn,